Why does public speaking cause so much anxiety for so many people? And how do you overcome it? Hello, my name is Chester Elton, and with me is my dear friend and co-author, Adrian Gostick.
Well, thanks, Jess. Yeah, the pressure to present to any audience can be overwhelming, especially if you are neurodivergent. Our guest today is a world-class public speaker. He's an actor, an executive speech coach who's helped many people hone their public speaking abilities. As always, we hope the time you spend with us will help reduce the stigma of anxiety at work and in your personal life.
And with us is our dear friend, and he really is a dear friend. We've known Scott Christopher for, it seems like, forever. He's the author or co-author of best-selling business books, The Levity Effect, The 7 Ups of Happiness, and People. We hired Scott at the O.C. Tanner Company, where he served as Director of Client Training for 10 years. And today he is a popular speaker on levity and becoming a people person. He has a Master of HR Management degree from UConn and an extensive background in television and films. As an actor, he's guest starred in shows that you know, such as NCIS, Criminal Minds, Modern Family, as well as many Hallmark and Lifetime movies. A dear, dear friend. And we'd like to welcome a new friend, a sponsor to our podcast, Magic Mind. We have a special offer for you, but I have to tell you, I love Magic Mind. I use it all the time. It gets you in the flow. It's all natural. I love to take it on Monday mornings. If you have trouble with Mondays like I do, it's a great little boost. All the ingredients are natural. It's an easy up and an easy down. And because you're listening to our podcast, if you go to magicmind.com/Gostick and Elton Trial, there's a code that you put in called Gostick and Elton Trial, and you get free samples of Magic Mind. Now, you can cancel your subscription anytime. I really encourage you to do it. It has been a game changer for me, and I know it will be for you too. So again, magicmind.com/Gostick and Elton Trial with the code Gostick and Elton Trial for your free samples of Magic Mind. Well, Scott, we are delighted to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for finding the time. It's just so good to see you again.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you guys. It's an honor.
Well, start with the basics, Scott. You are an expert in public speaking. You help others with this. Why is public speaking such a big fear for so many people?
You know, right out of the chute, for me, the number one reason that I am afraid of public speaking as a public speaker is typically a lack of preparation and knowledge of the topic. Those are the things that throw me for a loop. But I think most people, and I've talked obviously to a lot of people over the years, it may be some traumatic event from their childhood, once bitten, twice shy. It may be a question of unmet expectations or expectations that aren't fully made clear. Why are you speaking? What's the point? What's the objective? And that can put a real knot in your stomach, especially if your confidence is lacking and you think, I may not be able to actually meet the objectives of whoever is having me speak publicly. They talk a little bit about.
I look at people like you and Chester, and you would beat people up to get to a microphone. Is there some sort of genetic defect with people like you versus, sort of us normal people?
Possibly. That's actually.
I like that Adrian puts himself as the normal person in the room. Yeah.
It may be. Some statistics say that up to 3/4 of adults are normal, I guess, because they fear public speaking. And it's not really the fear of speaking itself. It is the fear of the public's reaction to their speech that scares them. And so I think that's inherent in all of us, no matter how much we clamor to grab the mic or to steal the spotlight. We just want to make sure that our words are resonating and they land nicely.
Okay, so walk us through the prep. So what do you do so that you don't feel so anxious? You've talked a little bit about preparation, practice, and expectations, but do you have kind of a checklist you go through?
Again, for me, and this will be hopefully a key takeaway, is once again, cannot overemphasize the preparation part, which you just did. Thank you very much. And really, that does solve myriad problems. However, yes, there are some things that I do that some people can do to kind of calm themselves down. First of all, just sort of the physical look. You have to make sure you don't have spinach in your teeth, from that wonderful salad you just had. Check your clothes. Are there obvious stains? Are you a sweater? Do you sweat a lot? If so, are you wearing dark enough clothes, or are you covering the areas that would sweat? Right out of the gate, you simply want to make sure there's no reason unknown to you that people might be laughing and you don't know why. Seriously.
Comfortable clothes too, right? I mean, you want to be able to move and wave your arms and.
Exactly. This is about comfort, for sure, because comfort is key to relaxation. And so some of the things that I will do is I will kind of clench and then loosen. And when I say clench, I know that you're not seeing this. I don't necessarily mean what you think I mean, although you could clench down there and loosen, and it would certainly relax you. But I mean, ball up your fists as tight as you can. Ball up your face, scrunch. They're old actor tricks, because being relaxed, totally relaxed, is the best way to ensure some degree of success. So I'll take deep breaths. For me personally, typically what I will do is I will find a reflection of myself somewhere, a coffee urn, the back of a spoon, Chester's head, wherever I can look, see a little bit of myself, and kind of just start smiling, like big smiles or even a laugh. And I essentially say to myself, who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody knows what I'm going to speak on, or if they do, they don't know what I've prepared. They're not following along on a shot list or a script. Just enjoy it. Just have fun. Get relaxed. Shake it out. And then go have fun.
You talk about have fun, and I have a breathing thing on it. You say take a deep breath. Since we're doing this podcast, we have all these experts come in, and the breathing, the block breathing, and all that I find helps really well. The point that you made, though, that I think is really interesting is the audience doesn't know what they don't know. So often I'll come off the stage and go, oh, I missed that part, or I missed one of my favorite things, that we got distracted and I didn't do. And you beat yourself up, and the audience goes, we didn't know you were going to do that. We thought it was great, right?
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately a key to success, is that what you're judging your success on has nothing to do. They just want to know, did I learn anything at all? Was I semi-entertained? This is their time they're investing in you, whether it's a board meeting or a company conference, or you're a keynote speaker at some association. Their time is their investment. You have to be able to read the room, right? I mean, if they're sitting at full round tables and half of them after 5 to 10 minutes have still not turned their chairs around to see you, you've got to read the room. You've got to be able to understand, all right, something's not connecting here. What can I do?
Well, let's get to that, because what do you do if people aren't connecting with you? And maybe you're not a Scott Christopher, you're not able to command a room, but what can you do to get people to pay more attention to what you have to say if you're already in the middle of whatever you're presenting?
Right. I love that. I'll introduce an acronym that I came up with a while back. I like to call it a shift. If I see that happening, I shift things. And shift stands for sudden halt, introduce frivolous topic. That's SHIFT.
What's your favorite frivolous topic? Do you have a go-to? Is it
religion
or politics?
Give us an example of this. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't, and sometimes the F is foreign, a foreign topic, like foreign to the theme that's being talked about. It's just something that gives you a minute to change gears, to shift gears. All right, my heart is beating. I'm nervous. That particular point didn't land, or that joke didn't fall. It wasn't successful there. I just need to shift for a second. So you may have your deck stacked a little bit with topics that are relevant. Before I go on, I absolutely must know who Leon Shemlin is in this room and why he doesn't remember what happened at last night's cocktail reception, whatever it is. You stop for a minute. I must know, where did you get those shoes? My gosh, those are, and that's when you start to, you don't have to be a Chester Elton and command the room to be able to start a conversation with someone. And to your point, Adrian, before I even get nervous or uncomfortable, I try to make sure that I can see at least the first few rows, if it's a huge venue, of the audience, and that may be them turning down the spotlights or turning up the house lights or a combination of the two. But to really kind of get comfortable, you have to be able to see people. The old adage of, envision them naked or look at a spot on the back of the wall. If you have to use that to get going, great. But ultimately, your nerves should be a slightly calmer if you'll engage with, for starters, just one person. Talk to that one person. Have a conversation. Don't go too long. The audience wants to be talked to as well, but keep it brief and just shift for a moment. Sometimes those are built in. You can build little shifts into your slide deck or into your prepared words. But often when that unexpected nervousness comes, have one or two ready to go. Address what's in. If there's an elephant in the room, if everyone is literally thinking about last night's this or that, you'd be silly to not mention it.
We did have that situation. Do you remember, Adrian, when we were giving a speech? It was a big crowded room and COVID hit and everything was being canceled and, they were doing all they could and people were looking at their phones and we said, okay, look, we get it. Everybody's nervous. Everybody's got a flight. Let's take a beat. You're right. If there's something like crazy going on, you've got to address that. It's funny. We all three of us, we like to inject a little humor into our speeches, and you got to be careful with that because what you think is funny can be offensive, if you're not careful. And particularly now, there's so many areas that seem to be the third rail for talking. One of the things that I always like to do is I'll tell a little joke that I think is particularly funny. And then you realize that you're the only one in the room that got the joke. I know this has happened to you because it happens to me more often than I care to admit. And I'll just stop and say, don't worry. Some of the jokes are just for me. Like, I thought that was funnier than you did, and that's okay. And it's funny how people go, yeah, you're right. That really wasn't funny,
right? Yeah, there's a place for the self-effacing humor for sure. I think that's possibly one of the ways. If you own up to the fact that you're nervous, really, you'll hit it out of the park by being authentic. And if you are kind of a nervous nerdy who everyone knows isn't great at public speaking, and you stand there and you say something like, look, you guys know me, I'm a bit nervous in front of crowds. I have to picture the passengers naked when I board a plane, for heaven's sakes, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just being in front of anybody, it gets me sweaty. And those are the kind of things that will endear you more to your audience, and that will put you at ease as well. Is to kind of own up to your weaknesses.
Yeah. So that's a good point. So what happens if you're off to a good start and you're kind of rolling, and then something happens, you get a little distracted, and all of a sudden in the middle of your speech you're like like you've lost your place? Or what do you do when in the middle you start to panic? You've got the panic under control at the beginning, and now you're in the middle and you realize that either you're losing the room or you've lost your train of thought, or how do you recover?
Yeah, well, I would just say see previous comment about shift.
Shift.
Really,
yeah, there you go.
That's the advice I give. Is you certainly can't just bow your head and say thanks, it's been great. We're going to take lunch 40 minutes early. You actually you just have to press on, and I know that seems oversimplified. You can either take a shift, or just press on. And if you'll just press on and keep going, get through it, you'll get past the awkward moment. You'll get past the weird, the laugh that didn't ever come, and people will be with you. They'll side with you if you just keep pushing forward.
You know,
That
worst
idea,
thing
yeah, I like that idea of people siding with you. That's important, getting them on your side. And I like the idea of, bringing it back to your group, especially if it can be a little lighthearted. I remember one watching one speaker just bombing, and she just said, Joe, thanks for wearing that shirt. He had this bright shirt on the front, and everybody busted up. And it was just like you said, it's that shift. It just brought it back. And she was the most dry, boring CFO or whoever she was. But after she said that, she had everybody.
Yeah. Two things that, a guy gave me a great tip one time. He said, look, understand that people are coming to hear you speak and they want you to be good. Like they're cheering for you, whether you're a professional speaker or you're the CFO, right? And so they're going to give you some grace. They're going to give you more grace than you think, right? Because they're glad it's you up there and not them for a lot of reasons, right? Talk to me a little bit about, and I've seen this happen, and it's always awkward for me where I'll see the CEO or the president or whatever, and they'll swear, like they'll be a little profane, and they think they're being really authentic. And it always leaves me a little bit like, why did you go there? Do you know what I mean? And there's so many comedians and so on. And even in politics now, you're seeing that language is getting really, really raw. Can you talk about that? Is it ever appropriate to use like vulgar language or what's your thoughts?
Yeah. I obviously, in terms of professional
Hell no, Chester is what he meant to say.
Well,
what are you talking about? Yeah.
Leave it to Adrian to bring it down.
Well, he's normal. Yeah,
in terms of professional speaking engagements, obviously you're dealing with a client and you're going to talk to them beforehand. And I will always ask, what's the level of tolerance and acceptance of kind of brash or blue things? And typically I'll say to them, I am not by nature, a potty mouth guy, although obviously we just heard Adrian use the H word.
H-E double hockey sticks.
It's in the Bible, guys.
Oh, you Canadian hockey guys. What's interesting is I will typically try to gauge where the audience is at. And if somebody sets the mark, especially whoever's introducing me, or if it's one of the senior executives, by cussing, I will immediately look to see how they react. Now, there's a lot of sycophancy. There are people who are going to laugh no matter what, and I have to kind of weed that out. I don't have any curse words planned in any of my talks ever, but occasionally in the heat of the moment, I may say a thing or two that stretches the boundaries of... But I've read the audience first, so I kind of know. If I'm speaking to a primarily human resources type, your audience. And you know that there are just some things that you can or can't say, even when the sponsor is setting a poor example. It's just, how about a hand for Teresa? That was stunning. I've had some fun. I try to have fun with the people that are in charge too, because, as a third party outsider, I can get away with things, and you can do the same. This will also kind of help calm your nerves sometimes if you're polite and delicate about, that that's the CEO in the front row, or that's the VP of whatever, and you still pick on them and you act like you don't know them. And so by being ignorant of their status and station, you can play with them a little bit, and that the crowd is laughing sort of comfortably, uncomfortably, and you're talking to them and you're having fun with them. And then later someone says, you know who that was? That was the chairman of the board. And doing that has been a great way for that chairman of the board to have an excuse to be a little more transparent from a personal perspective to his or her constituents. And for me, to be able to endear myself to the audience. I had a guy, Adrian, I think you remember this. I can't remember. I was speaking to a group in Canada, and the CEO or the chairman of the board, whose name was like Michel Trousseau or
Oh,
something
yeah, I
like
remember
the
that.
last
Yeah.
name looked like trousers in French. And I'm like, who's this guy up here? What's your name, sir? Michel Trousseau. Is it Mickey Trousers? It's Mickey Pants, everybody. Say hello to Mickey Pants. And this was an ignorant, I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, yeah.
And the people couldn't, they laughed for 10 minutes. I had him eating out of the palm of my hand.
But for the rest of us, yeah, don't make fun of the chairman.
No.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
That's not a concrete.
Because remember, Scott introduced himself there just a moment ago as an ignorant outsider. So how do people learn more about your work as an ignorant outsider, Scott? Where would you send them?
Typically just to levityeffect.com. Actually, it would be easier as scottchristopher.net.
scottchristopher.net. And you also claim to be the president of something called Levity Matters, which I imagine is like a political think tank. And with the amazing Adrian Gostick, you wrote a book called The Levity Effect.
Yes,
so what if people can come back to this idea? Everybody wants to, make a joke. And I've seen this done actually really well, where somebody who's so stiff will get up and they'll have a paper in front of them and they'll read a joke. But because it's Bob the CFO, people are dying laughing because they want a little lightness, don't they? But Chester mentioned this earlier.
Well, I think you've given a beautiful example, honestly, because what is humor? I mean, it really is an unexpected turn of events, verbal, physical, whatever. And so for Bob to even try to tell a joke is levity at work. I mean, it is a perfect example of infusing humor because it is unexpected. If the joke lands or not, if they get the punchline, if the timing, the poor guy stresses the wrong word, that makes it even funnier. And so I will typically encourage speakers to be themselves. And if themselves is not necessarily a person who can generate humor off the cuff, then go ahead and have something that's been, vetted by your spouse and other people close to you, have it prepared and use it, because that's just such a great way to endear yourself to your people.
Excellent. Hey, we're always interested in self-care tactics. You've talked about some of your preparation stuff, but you travel a lot, you're here and there and everywhere. The podcast is called Anxiety at Work. What are some of your personal care rituals that take care of your anxiety?
For my anxiety, I have no anxiety.
Yeah, you forget we know you, Scott.
Obviously, and I think everyone knows this. It's probably very trite to say, but sleep is just so important, and it's so hard to do, especially as a professional speaker. You're on the road a lot. I've found as I've gotten older that if I feel like I need a nap, I'm going to take the nap. I can't remember if it was Benjamin Franklin or Einstein or somebody I think it was Franklin who basically just said, sleep whenever you can, whenever you feel like sleeping, make sure you sleep. For me, the full night's rest is almost not possible. So I break it up throughout the day if I can. If I don't have anything pressing on a plane, I will put on the face mask with the earphones and try to shut out the world and catch sleep wherever I possibly can. Also for me, keeping my brain as sharp as possible kind of keeps me feeling well mentally, obviously. I do Wordle and puzzles every day, and I'll share them with friends or whatever. We kind of compete, but crossword puzzles and Wordles and things like that, just to kind of keep my mind exercised. They've recently found that there is no direct correlation between doing puzzles and things like that and actually all that much impact on dementia or Alzheimer's later in life. But they do say it's healthy for your brain now.
Yeah,
and that's a good thing.
What's one thing you don't do?
I do it all, baby.
Some people say, I never watch, I never looked at the news before. If I want to feel good, I don't doom scroll, or I don't watch, violent movies or whatever. But anyway, that was an unfair question.
Well,
But
no, well, maybe it sounds like we're getting a list out of you of things
Thanks for the therapy session. Yeah, for Chester. That's great.
Yeah,
that you never
Hey,
do.
I see we
I
have
mean-
about 1 minute left, and
Oh.
give us some last thoughts, Scott. What but they have to do it. What kind of advice do you have for us as we close?
Yeah, again, and I told you I'd reiterate this. You've got to have the material down pat. You've just got to, even if you don't have a lot of time, if you're speaking extemporaneously, that's a whole other ball of wax, in which case you have to accept the fact that the people that are there probably know you're also speaking off the cuff. So give yourself a break. But truly, preparation of material, knowledge of material inside and out, if you are ready to go, just like an actor, the hardest part of their job, the biggest part of their job is learning the material. Once it's in their head, they're free to be themselves. They're free to listen to people. They're free to react. They're free to seem very natural. And that's ultimately what you want to do as a speaker, again, in the boardroom or in a ballroom, is you want to be yourself. You want to be relaxed. You want to be authentic. So know the stuff, know the speech, have it ready to go so that at any time, nerves or some gaffe, anything that happens, you can deal with it.
Chris, this has been great. It's been a long time since you and I have had a chat. I know you and Adrian talk
Or
often.
Scott? We call him
Thanks,
Scott. You call
Elt.
him Chris.
Chris, I was introduced as Chelton Elton one time. Yeah. But Scott, no, it's been great to see you again. Love your smile, love your humor. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
You got it.
Well, that was great. It was good to have our dear friend Scott Christopher with us, Chess, and even better to learn. Really, an amazing executive coach who helps people, become better public speakers. Something that you've never had a problem with, kind of get up in front of an audience. But it's interesting for me to hear from you that you say, no, I still get nervous after doing this for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I know you get this comment a lot. Do you still get nervous? And I go, every time. In fact, I think if you don't get nervous, it maybe it's an indication that you don't really care anymore. So many great reminders for me. Comfortable clothes. It sounds like a simple thing. Make sure you're comfortable. I'll never forget, I was giving a speech and I bought these new shoes and the laces didn't stay tied. And I remember I've got this hour-long presentation. I must have retied my shoes like 5 times. People were wondering, what was wrong with that guy? So comfortable shoes, comfortable clothes. I loved his idea of tense up and then relax and tense up. Make sure that you've got. So that was, one of my first
And what you're doing is you're bringing yourself to the present, right? You are, whatever you're doing, if you have to, it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you see 5 things, you touch 4 things. There's the little tricks that people use, the breathing, the 4, 4, 8, whatever we want to call it. What you're doing is you're bringing yourself to the present, which I love. What did you think about this shift idea, the sudden halt, introduce frivolous topic idea? What do you think about that?
I love that he's got an acronym for it and that he actually places it there. I think you and I kind of do that when we see that, I remember you and I were presenting in a big hall and it was clear we weren't engaging and we actually went down into the audience to break things off, that little shift, that pause. When he talked about the French name that he made fun of or, mispronounced, not made fun of, but mispronounced.
Mikey Pants. Yeah.
Mikey Pants. Yeah, I was just up in Quebec. When he said that, I thought, I could definitely see that happening for an Anglophone, Those little shifts that do make a big difference, whether it's a little pause or it's calling somebody out or I thought that was a great, I didn't realize that that's what we were doing. And it's nice to have an acronym and a placeholder for that. I thought it was brilliant.
I love that too. And just a little distraction to not take ourselves too seriously. And most people in these kinds of meetings, now, if you're presented to the board of directors, don't try and be funny. They're not looking for that. But you can still not take yourself so seriously. But most times you're making a presentation, people want to be with you. They're so willing to have a little chuckle or a little laugh. And I've just seen it done so well where you just distract the audience a little bit. And, thanks, Bill, for wearing that shirt today. Thanks, whatever it is, just a silly little thing that gets everybody laughing.
Yeah. It's interesting in a big audience. Every now and again, you lean down and say, hey, I just want to call out somebody here in the pink dress. I don't know who your name is, but you have such a great smile. I got to tell you, whenever I feel like I'm being a little low, I look over at you and you give me just this burst of energy.
See, that's great.
Yeah.
It's a great shift.
And people know who that person is and they go, yeah, that's her. That is definitely her. I love that he kept saying, look, anxiety comes down when preparation goes up.
Yeah.
Rehearse it, talk to your spouse or your friend, run through it. I remember I was asked to speak at a dear friend's funeral last year. In fact, it's almost a year that happened. And I wanted it to be perfect because he was such a dear friend and his family. It was very unexpected that he passed. And I remember going for a long walk. I'll bet I practiced that 12 minutes. I'll bet I went through that 30 times if I went through it once. And so then when I got up there and I blocked it out, it wasn't like we had AV and all that kind of stuff. It was just stories of my dear friend. I felt so comfortable talking to those people because my preparation was high, so my anxiety was low.
And I love that idea because sometimes you'll hear people say, you can over-prepare. Not really. Not really.
So.
B, it's when Malcolm Gladwell popularized the 10,000 hour rule, it only works if you are actually practicing in a good way. So you can't practice the piano badly for 10,000 hours and get better. Right. Actually have to, as you did, you got more comfortable with it. You found ways to add inflection and tell the story in a meaningful way. The little levity that you brought in, which I know you did, became more from the heart. So no, you can't over prepare, but push yourself. Make sure that as you prepare, you're using different tone of voice. You get higher parts, you get lower parts, you get quieter, you slow down, try different things as you prepare.
Yeah. Well, one of the great things that a guy gave me a tip, and we actually did it with our Sunday school class, actually. Mm-hmm. We went to a revival meeting and watched the preachers. And to your point, they'd get real quiet and then they'd come back real loud and there'd be the pause and there'd be the repetition and then there'd be the callback. And I thought, those preachers, boy, you want a lesson in public speaking and making it engaging with the tambourines and the hallelujahs and the amens. Treat yourself. Go find a really fun evangelical church and listen to the preacher. It's always great fun. Well, we talk about great stories. And I'll tell you the story we love to tell is about our producer, Brent Klein. I mean, when you talk about the things that he went through as a child to get where he is.
No, we're not supposed to talk about that anymore, remember?
Anyway, we love Brent Klein. We think he's the greatest podcast producer of all time. And we always want to give him a shout out because he takes our mess and makes it into a masterpiece. And to Christy Lawrence, who finds all those great speakers for us and great guests like Scott Christopher. And to all of you who listen in, you've got time to do whatever you want to do with your podcast. And we're delighted that you took the time to spend it with us. If you like the podcast, please share it. We'd love to have you visit thecultureworks.com for some free resources to help you and your team thrive. And we encourage you to go to the website for your free offer for Magic Mind as well. But Adrian, what else do we do?
We love speaking to audiences around the world, virtually or in person. In fact, we were just about to do a presentation for one of the world's biggest banks here, and they want to hear more about gratitude. Other organizations want to hear more about culture, leadership, resilience. Give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about your event. And that's our story. Oh, by the way, also pick up a copy of our book, Anxiety at Work. And isn't there training on this, Chess?
There is. And if you go to thecultureworks.com, you can sign up as an individual. If you've got a team that wants to do it, please call us. We'll talk about a licensing agreement. We're getting great feedback on it, by the way. We're very proud of their training.
Well, until next time, everybody, thanks so much for joining us, and we wish you the best of mental health.